In this episode, Firefly, Episode 9, Ariel. Well, Megan, I'm well aware you like a good heist story. Where do you want to start with Ariel?
Oh, well, let's, I guess, start with the kind of groundwork for the episode. The crew and family are in the central kind of region of the universe. Inara has to be on a central planet to get an annual companion examination. And everyone's kind of sad because there's not a whole lot of work to do. But unfortunately, River has been getting a little bit worse. So Simon thinks, I can be the client. I will set up the job. We're going to steal a bunch of medicine to bring back out to the rim. What were some of your favorite parts?
Well, but the theft was almost a cover to get her in, River in, to do a brain scan. Because you're right, she does seem to be getting worse. And the brain scan, Simon hopes, will give him some insights into not only what was done to her, but perhaps allow him to develop a cure or some other type of response. Inara, go ahead.
Oh, importantly, one of the inciting incidents where we became aware River was doing so much more poorly was a unprovoked attack of Jayne in the mess hall, where she kind of lost her grip on what was happening, or saw something no one else saw, and gave him a little slashing with a kitchen knife.
So, did that portend a later event, or did that cause a later event?
I think that's one of the important questions that the episode raises. This is a big Jayne episode, as well as being a big heist episode.
I was a little discomforted by the full day examination. Mm-hmm. My wife did not appreciate that part. So I'll just leave it at that.
I guess I imagine there'd be your basic physical exams and probably maybe like therapeutic or psychological as well. And they maybe have a lot more tests in the future.
Probably so.
Maybe even for new things that could be awry.
Okay, so they head down. Simon concocts this pretty elaborate plan. And, the best heist plans are basically dig in through the roof, drop down, get the stuff, and go out. And that's it. But they're doing a whole lot more than digging through the roof. First, they have to steal essentially an EMS vehicle. Then they have to wheel them in, and they claim that they are dead, and they have given them some medicines to feign death, but they don't even need to show that. They just are ordered to the mortuary. Mm-hmm. Then they revive them, and then River and Simon are off, or Simon takes River off for the scan, and the rest of the crew, and I guess that's Zoe, Mal, and Wash, go steal the drugs and put them back in the coffins that they have carried the bodies in, and go back to the EMS vehicle. It's a, I don't want to say it's a helicopter, but it's some type of flying vehicle. And I actually thought that was very cool.
It was very cool. And there was such a great training and description montage when they were getting ready for it. Like the scenes of Wash and Zoe in the junkyard, trying to find the right equipment, the right vehicle, and then Mal and Zoe and Jayne all just struggling over the medical language. I thought that was just a really fun kind of set of scenes. I loved the montage.
And actually, I thought that was going to set us up, but there would be some huge kerfuffle over that, and that's how they'd get discovered. Well, it turns out when they wheel the bodies in, the nurse doesn't even question them. She just says, take them to the morgue. And Jayne is so concerned about his role and what to say, he spews out the rote memorization of what he is supposed to say, which was how they failed to revive them but gave every effort. And actually, I thought that was about as funny as it could have been.
Oh, it's so funny.
So, but we do get to a fairly disturbing part around Jayne, and I'm not sure if this was foretold, as I said, by River or caused by River, but Jayne has decided to sell the siblings out for the reward. And apparently it's a significant reward. The person he has sold them out to turns the tables on him and wants to collect the full reward. So he's more corrupt, and it is a he, more corrupt than Jayne. And that means that they're going to have to try and escape. And I really enjoyed the escape with Jayne fighting with his hands cuffed behind his back and basically whipping, all of the Alliance guards who are walking them to the transport. And I thought that was pretty cool. But what did you feel or think about Jayne's treachery?
Well, I remembered, a number of episodes back when it was, I think, the pilot, when, Jayne had the opportunity to betray Mal and the crew. And, the reason he said for why he didn't do it was that the money wasn't good enough. And Mal asked him, what would you ever do if the money was good enough? And he said, well, that'll be an interesting day. So the interesting day has arrived. There was enough money, and possibly it was instigated by, River attacking him, which fair, that's not cool. But, the day came and he made the arrangements to enact the betrayal. But because of that double crossing by the federal agent, he was never made. Like he was never found out by River and Simon, who ended up thinking he was a genius hero for how hard he had worked to protect them and save them, which I thought was a really interesting contrast. So I think he struggled with it. I think maybe he had made that arrangement in a fit of pique. Or anger, and maybe deep down didn't really want to.
I just, I found it completely within his character to do it, and that disturbed me as much as anything, because he didn't sell them out for a nickel. It was certainly more than that, but he sold them out, and he was going to sell them out until he got double-crossed. And, of course, the double-crosser then got double-crossed by the Alliance. And whenever you see men put on or have on plastic gloves, it's not a good time is about to happen.
Typically not a good time.
And whether they're from Section 31, whether they're the Watchers from Fringe, I'm not quite sure who they are, or maybe they're just the American CIA. I don't know. They're pretty nefarious individuals. They carry themselves nefariously, and they talk in short clipped sentences. And they just look very not nice. And so they show up to take control of Simon and River, and it kind of all goes to pot then. You want to pick it up?
Of course, because Zoe and Mal are back at the rendezvous point, and as soon as they miss the planned arrival time, they know something's up. And so then it kind of becomes a race. Who's going to get to Jayne and Simon and River first? Is it going to be the guys in the hands of Blue, or will it be the Serenity team? Happily, it was the Serenity team, and they are brought back on board, and Simon just goes on and on and on about the awesomeness of Jayne, and how great he was, and how hard he fought, and how much he had underestimated him, and meanwhile you're just thinking, oh no. But as far as we know, no one else knows yet, but Mal knew. Why don't you share what Mal did?
Well, and it really was this effusive, just over the top compliments to Jayne, and it's almost as if Simon turned to walk out of the room, and the next scene was Mal picks up a wrench and cold cocks Jayne, and boom, and then we see Jayne basically in an airlock. And when you're on a spaceship and you're in an airlock, when you piss somebody off, it is a seriously not good thing. We've all seen this. We all know where this is going. But let's focus on Mal for a few minutes, because I thought that was, how did he know? Was there something earlier in this show that you were, upon reflection, we were able to say, aha, that was the moment? Or how do you think Mal figured it out, other than just intuiting it?
I think a part of it was intuition. I think Mal's got great intuition, but much earlier, towards the beginning of the episode, when Jayne was being treated for the slash wound, he and Mal had a conversation. He was very clear, these aren't our crew. They're not adding any value. They're not helping us stay safe. They should not be here. And Mal said, nope, they are crew, and you're going to behave as if they're crew. And I think that was kind of the line for Jayne. I think that's what made him. I think he probably felt a little betrayed. He feels like you let someone stab me on my own ship, and I think that's what caused him to do it. And what really kind of touched me about the moment when he and Mel were having that conversation at the end was he really cares about the good opinion of the rest of the crew. He didn't want them to know he'd betrayed them, even though he had. And I thought that was kind of a tender moment, or as tender as Jayne gets.
Now, I have to say, I never felt like Mal was going to throw him out the airlock or execute him in some way. It's just, one, it would make for a terrible story. Two, I don't think Mal has it in him. And three, I'm sure we're going to have further Jayne adventures, so we can't kill him off yet.
But he had to scare hell out of him.
He did, and so whether Jayne learns his lesson or not, I don't know. But that was pretty effective as well, and a nice turn of events. This episode had some great action. Simon was right. Jayne was awesome.
Good.
He is so good. So that was cool. And also, not the main story or not the main storyline during that escape was the rescue, because they were led to the location where Jayne, Simon, and River were trying to escape out of from Wash on the vehicle, telling them where they were. And so I thought that part was kind of cool too. And of course, they saved the day at the last minute before our lads from Section 31 or wherever they are from show up. But I suspect we're going to see those bad guys again.
Oh, absolutely. And I think something that was really interesting about this episode is that for once the crime went right. Like, they achieved all of their criminal objectives for once. They got the medicine, they got the brain scan that they needed, and the problems were really more interpersonal, which I think is not something we've seen so much so far in the season. So I thought that was an interesting choice. And it's nice to see them get a little bit of a win, even if it came at a heavy price.
Indeed. Well, I think that brings us to the end. I am Tom Fox.
I'm Megan Doherty. See you next time.
This is Tom Fox again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Because That's What Heroes Do. If you've enjoyed this episode, I hope you'll subscribe, rate, and review wherever great podcasts are listened to. Because That's What Heroes Do is now the award-winning Because That's What Heroes Do, having won a Communicators Award for a top podcast in pop culture. I hope you'll join Megan and I again for our next episode in our review of the TV science fiction series Firefly. Because That's What Heroes Do is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.